With 10.1 of WoW Dragonflight being announced, also known as Season 2, under the name of Embers of Neltharion, we have some additional information from Blizzard that we are going to break down. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let's get right into it. With Dragonflight Season 2 Mythic Plus, we will have the 4 additional Dragonflight dungeons that have not been part of the main rotation yet. So that includes, as you can see here, Brackenhide Hollow, Halls of Infusion, Uldaman, and Neltharis. Then they have the 4 dungeons that they're bringing back. One of them, we haven't really seen it in the format of Mythic Plus, but the other 3 we have. So the first one is Freehold. Now, some people said, man, it's a little bit too early for them to bring on Freehold because it's from Battle of Azeroth, and Battle of Azeroth was 2 expansions ago. But let's not forget, in Season 4 of Shadowlands, they brought Mechagon, and Mechagon was a BFA dungeon. So for everybody that's saying, well, it's a little bit too soon for them to bring it on, guys, they already did this, and they did this last expansion in the last season. So I don't think it's too soon. And I actually think it's a very good pick. Freehold is the most requested dungeon to be brought back since they started announcing that they're going to, do this seasonal thing. The other one is also a Battle for Azeroth dungeon, which is the Underrot. And I have mixed feelings about Underrot simply because, one, that dungeon is awesome. It's really, really, really good dungeon. However, it's one of those dungeons where you really need to know how to execute. So in Freehold is not so much as execution, but it's more of the, hey, I have a key. I know that if I'm going to go into Freehold, I'll most likely time the key and I'm going to have a great time. However, when it comes down to the Underrot, I'm not entirely sure if that is potentially the case. It's quite a interesting dungeon. It's a little bit difficult. All the bosses are a little bit difficult. They scale quite well with Tyrannical, and you really need to have a little bit of skill set. The trash does involve that you use a certain priority interrupt, CC, all of those things. And, the tank knows what he's doing, has a pre-planned route, the whole thing. However, these 2 dungeons, the reason why they're so great is because they have the potential for you to create your own route and sort of lead your team to success as best you know possible. And as long as they're on board, you guys are going to do great. We've already seen Neltharion's Lair. I still remember playing it on my Blood DK with no healer because Blood DKs back then were broken. You would just bring a whole bunch of classes that could sustain themselves, like Havoc, Demon Hunter, and Warlocks, which would never die. And you would hit your artifact weapon as a Blood DK, and you would give everybody in your party a huge amount of leech for a decently long period of time. And you would also have a very short cooldown on that. So I'm really happy to see Neltharion's Lair come back. I have a couple of issues with Neltharion's Lair, and I'll tell you which those are in just a second. However, I'll say this. The fact that they're bringing back another dungeon from Legion, and they're bringing that back something like Neltharion's Lair, it kind of makes it a little bit awkward because we already have a dungeon called Neltharis. So we have another one that's called Nelth. So imagine somebody going like, hey, you want to run Nelth? Oh, which one? You have a lot of mobs that are non-casters. And that is also true for Brackenhide Hollow. There's a bunch of mobs that are not casters. They're range mobs. They throw rocks at you. And the problem with this dungeon is that when you were playing high keys back in Legion, you could not tank those mobs because they would one-shot you. However, in Legion, there's one important thing. In Legion, there was no tank threat problem. So you could have your Blood DK run around, just Blood Boil a pack, and that tank would never lose threat. It's just one Blood Boil, and you just kite forever. And what you would do, literally, is you would go and pull all the trash to the first boss and just kite it, and have your DPS, bring it down. Do the same thing to boss 2, do the same thing to the worm boss 3, and do the same thing to boss 4. That's all you did as a tank. You would just tag a mob and kite it. With the changes to threat, that might not be possible. And also, with the scaling of fortified that also may not be possible. So I really hope they will take a second look at the dungeon and they might revamp some of these things. The last dungeon, Vortex Pinnacle, Cataclysm. Very interesting. Here's why it's interesting. In an interview they did a couple of months ago, it might have been during beta, they announced that going to expansions earlier than Mists of Pandaria, and Mists of Pandaria came after Cataclysm, is quite tough. And the reason why is because they would need to basically revamp these dungeons from the ground up. Them picking a Cataclysm dungeon might create some issues, but I have some good news. Mists of Pandaria introduced challenge modes, and challenge modes gave you great rewards. Now, challenge modes were the precursors to Mythic Plus. It basically what allowed Mythic Plus to become a reality. They expanded on challenge modes in Warlords of Draenor. And then, when they introduced Legion, they also brought forth Mythic Plus. They went away from challenge modes, but at least we got Mythic Plus. The fact they're actually going an expansion older than when they initially introduced challenge modes, it tells me at least a couple of things. Developers really think that they can challenge themselves. 2, they're looking for thematical things because Cataclysm was a expansion about Deathwing, and because we're talking about literally a patch that has the name Embers of Neltharion, we are looking at some elements that are related to Neltharion. In Temple of the Jade Serpent, it wasn't easy, but they were successful. It was also a little bit tough to do it with Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, and we know how that turned out. But I think we're giving them enough feedback, and they know how to select, and they use the right information to create the right product. We will expand more upon these 8 dungeons as we go through them, and there's going to be videos on the main channel that are going to include me running through them, give my opinions, what to look for, and different information that I believe is going to be helpful for people to prepare for Season 2. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, check out some of the other videos. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, leave it in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.